Dr. Wilson speaking directly to you, and I want you to hear every word of what I'm about to say, because this is not an exaggeration, not a tactic to hold your attention. What I'm sharing with you today has the very real potential to change the direction of your health. Tonight, in your kitchen, using something most people already have within arm's reach, there's a 2-minute habit that research confirms can lower blood pressure faster and more dramatically than most older adults have ever been told is achievable. 2 minutes. Your kitchen. Tonight. And if you do this consistently over the next 4 to 6 weeks, your blood pressure numbers could fall by 15, 20, even 25 points. Now here's the part that is going to make your blood boil just a little. This information exists. The studies are published. The journals are reputable. The science is peer-reviewed and solid. And yet nobody in a white coat has ever sat across from you and explained any of it. Not your internist, not your cardiologist, not the pharmacist who hands you a paper bag every single month. Nobody. I'll come back to why that is. But first, I need you to understand what high blood pressure is actually doing inside your body right now, tonight, while you're sitting still and feeling perfectly fine. Because most older adults genuinely believe their medication is handling the problem. They take the pill. The number on the monitor drops a little. They feel reassured. But the damage continues. Quietly, invisibly, relentlessly. And until you understand what that damage actually looks like at the cellular level, you won't fully appreciate why the habit I'm about to teach you is so much more powerful than another prescription. Let me tell you about a woman I'll call Patricia. She was 73 years old when she walked into my practice for the first time. She had been on blood pressure medication for 12 years. It began with a single pill when she was 61. Her doctor at the time said her reading of 139/89 wasn't alarming, but it was worth managing. So Patricia, being the kind of person who followed instructions and trusted the system, took her pill without complaint every single morning. And her numbers kept climbing. 143/91, then 149/93. A second medication was added, then a third. By the time she came to see me, Patricia was on 3 blood pressure medications at their maximum doses, and her pressure was still sitting at 158/95, dangerously elevated, still moving in the wrong direction. And her doctor was preparing to prescribe a 4th pill. But what was even more striking was what Patricia described when I asked her how she was actually feeling day to day. She couldn't sleep. She would lie in bed for hours, her mind flickering awake, her body never fully surrendering to rest. When she did sleep, she'd jolt awake 2 or 3 times a night for no reason she could name. No pain, no noise, just sudden wakefulness, as though her nervous system had forgotten how to let go. She hadn't woken up feeling genuinely rested in so long she couldn't remember what that felt like. Every morning, she climbed out of bed feeling like she was dragging herself through water. Her limbs felt dense. Her joints ached before she'd taken a single step. She had been a walker once, someone who covered 4 or 5 miles without giving a second thought. Now a trip to the kitchen for breakfast felt effortful in a way that frightened her. She used to spend hours in her garden, planting, pruning, kneeling in the dirt with her hands deep in the soil. She hadn't been out there in over a year. Not because she'd lost interest, but because she simply had nothing left in the tank by the time she considered it. By mid-afternoon, she was barely functional. Her eyelids would grow heavy. Her concentration would scatter. She noticed her hands shaking at the dinner table, a fine tremor, enough to embarrass her when she had guests, enough that she'd quietly stopped inviting people over for meals. Her memory was becoming unreliable in ways that terrified her. She'd have a full conversation and then have no recollection of it hours later. She'd forget her sister's telephone number, a number she'd dialed hundreds of times. Words would disappear mid-sentence, hovering just out of reach while she stood there with her mouth open, grasping for something that used to come instantly. Her husband had noticed. She could see in the way he watched her, the quiet worry behind his eyes, and she knew what he was thinking because she was thinking it too. Her mother had spent her final years unable to recognize her own family. Patricia sat in my office and wept, not dramatically, just steadily, quietly. She said, "I feel like I'm fading. Every day, there's a little less of me left. and nobody asks me how I feel. They just look at the number on the cuff and write another prescription. I held her hand, and I told her something that 12 years of medical appointments had never given her. Patricia, we have been addressing the wrong thing. Your blood pressure isn't the disease. It's the distress signal. Something underneath is broken. And every prescription you've been given has been trying to silence the alarm without ever investigating what triggered it. Over the following 2 weeks, I ordered tests that standard blood pressure management never includes. And what they showed was not complicated. It was not mysterious. In fact, it was so clear and so fixable that I felt a deep frustration on her behalf that nobody had looked sooner. Patricia's body was in a state of significant chronic inflammation. The cells lining her blood vessels, the endothelial cells, were damaged and underperforming. They were no longer producing adequate quantities of a molecule called nitric oxide. And without that molecule, her blood vessels had lost their ability to relax. They were locked in a state of sustained constriction. No medication can fully override that. Medications can force vessels open temporarily. They can manipulate fluid volume, but they cannot heal the endothelium. They cannot restore nitric oxide production. They are, at their best, a temporary override of a problem they were never designed to fix. Patricia's diet told the whole story. Like most people her age eating a standard modern diet, she lived on processed foods, packaged meals, white bread, boxed pasta, very little fresh produce, almost nothing green, almost nothing that carried the nutrients her compromised blood vessels were desperately starving for. And the moment I saw that, I knew exactly what to prescribe. Not a pill, something from her kitchen. But before I tell you what that is, I need you to understand the biology, because if you don't understand it, you'll try the habit for a week and abandon it. And if you do understand it, you will never stop, because you will see with absolute clarity what is happening inside your arteries every single time you do it. Your blood vessels are lined on the inside by a layer of cells called the endothelium, 1 cell thick. That is the only barrier between your blood and the walls of your arteries. These cells are not passive. They are constantly producing signaling molecules that govern how your vessels behave, how they widen, how they constrict, how elastic they remain, how will they function under pressure. The most critical molecule they produce is nitric oxide. Remember that name. Nitric oxide. It is a gas that diffuses directly into the smooth muscle tissue wrapping your arteries and delivers one clear instruction. Relax. Open. Let the blood flow freely. When your endothelium is healthy, nitric oxide production is strong. The vessels stay supple. They expand when circulation demands it. They respond correctly to the rhythms of your heart, and your blood pressure remains in a healthy range without effort. When your endothelium is damaged, nitric oxide production collapses. It can fall by 50% or more. And when that happens, your blood vessels lose their elasticity. They stay narrowed. Your heart must pump harder to move the same volume of blood through tighter tubes. Blood pressure rises, and it keeps rising year after year as the damage accumulates and the endothelium becomes less and less capable of keeping up. What damages the endothelium? Several things that are disturbingly common in modern daily life. Elevated blood sugar damages it. Every time glucose spikes after a refined, carbohydrate-heavy meal, toxic compounds called advanced glycation end products form in the blood. These compounds directly attack endothelial cells, degrading their function and reducing nitric oxide output. If you're eating processed carbohydrates and sweet foods multiple times per day, you are chemically injuring your own blood vessel lining multiple times per day. Chronic inflammation damages it. Inflammatory molecules circulating in the bloodstream assault endothelial cells continuously, reducing their function and accelerating deterioration. And what drives chronic inflammation? Poor diet, disrupted sleep, persistent stress, excess abdominal fat, compromised gut function. These are not exotic problems. They are the defining features of how most people over 65 are living. Oxidative stress damages it as well. Free radicals, those unstable molecules that damage healthy tissue, attack the endothelium relentlessly, targeting the very cellular machinery responsible for nitric oxide synthesis. And oxidative stress is made worse by everything I just described. All of it feeds all of it. It is a cycle, and it accelerates with age. Here is the part that changes how you see all of this. Your endothelium can heal. Let that sink in. It is not permanent damage. The cells can regenerate. Nitric oxide production can recover. Blood vessels can regain flexibility. Studies following people who made specific dietary changes have measured meaningful improvements in endothelial function within weeks. Blood vessels became more responsive. Nitric oxide levels rose. Blood pressure came down. Your body has been trying to do this the entire time. It is built for recovery. What has not been given is the raw material it needs to carry that recovery out. And that is what the 2-minute kitchen habit provides. Every evening before bed, drink a small glass of beetroot juice, approximately 250 milliliters, roughly 8 ounces, 30 seconds to pour, 30 seconds to drink, 2 minutes if you take your time. That is the habit. That is the anchor of this entire system. Beetroot is one of the most thoroughly researched foods on the planet for cardiovascular benefit. The mechanism is elegant. Beetroot is rich in dietary nitrates, not nitric oxide directly, but the raw material your body converts into it through a simple biological chain. You drink the juice. The nitrates are absorbed. Bacteria naturally living in your mouth convert them into nitrite. Your stomach and bloodstream complete the conversion to nitric oxide. Within 30 to 60 minutes, nitric oxide levels in your blood rise meaningfully. Your blood vessel walls respond, the smooth muscle relaxes, and blood pressure drops. Research published in reputable nutrition and cardiology journals has found that regular beetroot juice consumption reduces systolic blood pressure by an average of 6 to 10 points, with diastolic reductions of 4 to 6 points. In people with significantly elevated pressure, the effects are often larger, and the benefits compound over time. The cumulative effect after 4 to 6 weeks of nightly consumption is consistently more powerful than the immediate effect from a single glass. The body learns. The endothelium begins to recover. Nitric oxide production builds toward its former capacity. Now, let me introduce the other half of the system. Because beetroot juice alone, consumed in a diet otherwise full of inflammatory processed foods, is fighting upstream. You need the defense alongside the offense. Nitric oxide is fragile. Once produced, it can be destroyed almost instantly by free radicals called superoxide radicals. The nutrient that neutralizes those radicals and protects nitric oxide long enough for it to do its work is vitamin C. Most older adults are not getting nearly enough of it. Red bell peppers are the single most accessible and concentrated source available at any grocery store. One red bell pepper provides more vitamin C than an orange. Slice it raw, add it to your meals, keep a few in the refrigerator within easy reach. Kiwi fruit, strawberries, broccoli, and citrus are all excellent additions as well. Dark leafy greens deserve a place at the center of this system, not as a side note, but as a primary pillar. Spinach, kale, Swiss chard, and arugula are among the most nitrate-dense foods that exist. Gram for gram, they contain as much or more nitrate than beetroot juice. They also fight inflammation directly through their antioxidant content. They are rich in folate, which helps the endothelium produce nitric oxide more efficiently. And they are one of the best dietary sources of magnesium, a mineral that functions as a natural calcium channel blocker inside your blood vessel walls. Magnesium deserves its own moment here because the deficiency is staggeringly widespread and profoundly underdiagnosed. Estimates suggest that half or more of adults over 65 have inadequate magnesium levels. Magnesium prevents calcium from entering the smooth muscle cells that surround your arteries. When calcium floods in, those muscles contract and your arteries narrow. When magnesium is present in sufficient quantity, the contraction is moderated and blood pressure stays lower. Magnesium deficiency also causes nighttime leg cramps, heart palpitations, anxiety, persistent fatigue that no amount of sleep seems to fix, constipation, and disrupted sleep. If you recognize those symptoms, and nobody has ever tested your magnesium levels. That is a conversation worth having. In the meantime, dark leafy greens, almonds, pumpkin seeds, avocados, black beans, and dark chocolate with at least 70% cacao content are all excellent dietary sources. Potassium is the next piece, and it is critically underappreciated in the standard blood pressure conversation. Most people have been told to reduce sodium intake, and that is reasonable advice. But here is what almost no one explains. Reducing sodium without increasing potassium is an incomplete strategy. Potassium and sodium work as a regulatory pair. When potassium is abundant, the kidneys efficiently excrete excess sodium. Blood volume stays controlled. Blood pressure stays lower. When potassium is chronically low relative to sodium intake, the kidneys retain sodium, fluid accumulates, blood volume rises, and pressure climbs. The average older adult is taking in barely half the potassium their body requires daily, often as little as 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams when the body needs 3,500 to 4,700. Avocados, sweet potatoes eaten with the skin on, white potatoes with the skin, spinach, bananas, tomatoes, lentils, beans, oranges, and cantaloupe are all excellent sources. Many of them overlap with the foods already mentioned, which is precisely the point. This system is not a long memorized list. It is a small group of deeply powerful foods that provide protection on multiple fronts simultaneously. Raw garlic is another element that deserves serious attention. When garlic is crushed or finely chopped, a compound called allicin is produced through enzymatic action. Allicin activates the enzyme inside your endothelial cells that manufactures nitric oxide. It literally stimulates the production machinery directly, working in parallel with the nitrate pathway that beetroot and leafy greens activate. Analyses of multiple clinical trials have found consistent and significant blood pressure reductions in people who consume garlic regularly, averaging 5 to 9 points systolic, with stronger effects in those whose blood pressure was already elevated. The key is that the garlic must be raw. Cooking destroys the enzyme responsible for producing allicin. Crush 1 or 2 cloves, let them rest for 10 to 15 minutes to allow full enzymatic activity, and then eat them mixed in a yogurt, stirred through cottage cheese, blended into a smoothie, or combined with a little honey if the intensity is too sharp at first. Within a week, most people adapt. Many come to genuinely enjoy it. Omega-3 fatty acids round out the core of the system. EPA and DHA, found in fatty fish such as salmon, sardines, mackerel, herring, and anchovies, are the most potent dietary anti-inflammatory compounds available. They reduce circulating inflammatory molecules, protect endothelial cells from ongoing damage, improve vessel flexibility, and reduce oxidative stress. Eating fatty fish 2 to 3 times per week provides meaningful protection. Studies show consistent blood pressure reductions of 3 to 5 points, with larger effects in people carrying higher levels of systemic inflammation. For those who genuinely cannot eat fish regularly, a high-quality fish oil supplement is a reasonable alternative, though whole food sources remain preferable. Dark chocolate with at least 70% cacao content rounds out the system in a way that surprises most people and delights them once they accept it. Cacao contains compounds called flavonols that stimulate endothelial nitric oxide production through the same pathway activated by garlic and beetroot. 1 to 2 ounces of high cacao dark chocolate daily has been shown in multiple peer-reviewed studies to reduce blood pressure by 3 to 5 points. It also provides a meaningful dose of magnesium. The cacao content is everything. Below 70%, the flavonol concentration drops sharply and the sugar content rises. Milk chocolate provides none of these benefits. There is also one commonly overlooked mistake that may be quietly undermining the entire system for many people who try it. The conversion of dietary nitrates into nitric oxide depends on bacteria that live in your mouth. These bacteria are essential to the process. An antibacterial mouthwash destroys them. Studies have confirmed that people who use antibacterial mouthwash before consuming nitrate-rich foods show dramatically smaller blood pressure reductions than those who don't. If you have been drinking beetroot juice or eating leafy greens while also using antibacterial mouthwash twice a day, the mouthwash may be canceling out much of the benefit. The solution is simple. Stop using antibacterial mouthwash, or at minimum stop using it around the time you consume your nitrate-rich foods and drinks. Brush normally. Rinse with water. Let the bacteria in your mouth perform the function they evolved to perform. Timing also enhances the system considerably. Drinking beetroot juice before bed is particularly well chosen because blood pressure naturally rises during sleep and peaks in the early morning hours, the window when cardiovascular events are statistically most likely to occur. Having elevated nitric oxide circulating during those vulnerable hours means you are protecting yourself precisely when protection matters most. Garlic and leafy greens during the day provide sustained nitrate and allicin support during waking hours. Potassium-rich foods throughout the day assist kidney function around the clock. Vitamin C from bell peppers protects nitric oxide during the active, higher stress hours of the day. Together, they create an unbroken circle of support from the moment you wake until you fall asleep again. Patricia followed this system with remarkable consistency. Every evening before bed, her glass of beetroot juice. Every day, a crushed raw garlic clove mixed in her lunch. Spinach in her morning smoothie. A generous handful of kale or arugula with dinner. Avocado with her midday meal. Sweet potato roasted simply with olive oil 3 or 4 times a week. Salmon twice a week, baked without fuss. A small handful of almonds or pumpkin seeds in the afternoon. Red bell pepper slices with lunch, raw and crisp and sweet. Within 2 weeks, she was sleeping through the night. Within 4 weeks, her blood pressure had fallen from 158/95 to 142/86. 16 points systolic, 9 diastolic, purely through food. Within 8 weeks, it read 130/79. Her doctor reduced one of her 3 medications at that appointment. By the 5th month, Patricia was on a single medication at half its original dose, and her pressure was averaging 124/77. Her energy had returned with a steadiness that startled her. Her memory became more reliable. The tremor in her hands disappeared. The fog that had settled over her life began to lift. She came back into my office one afternoon, and she was a different woman than the one who had sat quietly weeping in that chair. She said something I have carried with me ever since. She said, "I feel as though someone reached into my life and turned the lights back on, and all I did was change what I keep in my kitchen." That is what this system does. It does not ask for perfection or extreme discipline or expensive interventions. It asks for a handful of real, affordable, accessible foods added thoughtfully to an ordinary life. It asks for a glass of dark red juice before bed and a clove of raw garlic at lunch and a generous handful of leaves with dinner. It asks you to choose avocado over crackers and salmon over a packaged frozen entree and to stop rinsing your mouth with a solution that kills the very organisms helping your arteries heal. One important note before you begin. Everything shared here is for educational purposes and does not replace your physician's guidance. If you are currently taking blood pressure medication, do not stop or reduce your dose without your doctor's direct involvement. Stopping antihypertensive medication suddenly can cause dangerous rebound effects. Instead, implement these dietary changes, monitor your blood pressure at home daily, keep a clear record, and bring that record to your next appointment. If your numbers are falling consistently and meaningfully, have a direct conversation with your doctor about whether medication adjustment is clinically appropriate. Let the data make the case. Let the numbers speak. That is the path forward. Your body has been trying to heal for years. It has the capacity. It has the mechanism. The endothelium can regenerate. The nitric oxide can return. The blood vessels can soften and widen and respond the way they were designed to respond. All of it is possible. What has been missing until now is simply this: the right raw materials delivered consistently starting tonight.